We just had another massive thunderstorm roll through Miami here, which is why I don't need my sunglasses again today, because it's basically dark outside even though it's the middle of the day out here. Striking now while I have the opportunity because I have a feeling it's going to come back. Let's get into what's happening with this massive eviction wave that is literally starting to ramp up right now. Now this is not a huge surprise because, as you all know, we had eviction moratoriums in place on the state level, local governments had them, as well as on the national level during the pandemic. Well, now that most of that is already completely expired, except for maybe a few select areas of California, evictions are starting to ramp up, okay? And thank you, DJ, for sending me this story, because this is something I've been wanting to cover for a while, and now that there is some news on this, it's time to start looking at it. Now, right away, the first thing that is mentioned in this story about evictions is that this is disproportionately affecting low-income folks that were relying on the help that was being given from the government in order to stay inside their units. And now that all of this is expiring, that homelessness is going up. But here's the interesting thing, guys. First of all, you know, these people would have been evicted during the pandemic if it wasn't for these protections. So whatever's happening right now is just a continuation of what would have happened 2 or 3 years ago if none of these protections were in place. So people can't come out and say, oh my God, we're so surprised that we're getting evicted now. And you know, the worst part about it is not even that people are getting evicted, but because of moral hazard and the government's intervention, right? They came in and made it look like things are going to be better for you because we're protecting tenants, we're helping people stay in their homes, when in reality, they kick the can down the road. So they're making decisions that disproportionately affect people that cannot pay. And by doing so, they allowed people to stay in their homes temporarily. But here's the problem. Now that people are starting to get evicted and evictions are ramping up, the cost of rent has gone up exponentially since the pandemic began. And if people would have just been evicted back then, they would have had a much easier time finding a more affordable place to live. But now that everything has gone through the roof in terms of rent and buying a place, that's largely off the table for a lot of people. And we know this is true because this story directly points this out as a problem, guys. In fact, it says this: across the country, low-income renters are in an even worse situation than before the pandemic due to things like massive increases in rent during the pandemic, inflation, and other pandemic-era related financial difficulties. So, once again, this is another example of moral hazard because the government made a decision that they don't have any consequences with, right? They're not going to be inconvenienced when the homeless numbers start to go up from this, you know, and people start getting evicted. They just wanted to look like the heroes in the moment. Oh, we're going to help people stay in their homes and put these moratoriums on rent, when all they really did was delay the inevitable. And now the problem is even worse because people that might have been able to find affordable housing during an eviction in 2020 that didn't happen now are completely shut out of the market because prices have gone insane. And at this point, the evictions are already so bad that eviction filings are up to 50% higher than they were pre-pandemic in some cities across the country. In fact, if we look at Houston, Texas, evictions are up 56% beyond pre-pandemic levels. Minneapolis and St. Paul, they're up 106% past pre-pandemic levels, guys. That is huge, okay? Nashville, 35% higher. Phoenix, Arizona, 33% higher. And the whole state of Rhode Island is 32% higher. And this is all higher than pre-pandemic numbers, okay? So people are really starting to see the consequences now of these eviction moratoriums being in place for way too long. I mean, was there maybe some grounds to keep those in place for a little while, maybe a few months until we figured out sort of what was going on? Maybe. But to have these things in place for 2-3 years in some places, absolutely insane. And now people are starting to see the consequences from this. And it's not just in these cities that we just talked about, guys. In fact, if you look at this page from evictionlabs.com, it shows you all of the major cities that they track, and the gray line that you guys see is when the moratoriums were in place, and all of these spikes with the red lines is the amount of eviction filings going up in these areas now that there are no more moratoriums on evictions. And as you can see, in every city that Eviction Labs tracks, it is skyrocketing, and that is alarming. In fact, this is going up so much that last year 970,000 evictions were filed in just the locations that Eviction Labs tracks. And they don't track the entire country because it's very difficult to get hands on all of this eviction data. And so they only track areas where they can actually get updated eviction records from the courthouse on a regular basis. And that is a 78.6% increase compared to 2021. And just wait to see what this percentage is going to be in 2023. You think 78% is a lot? It's about to get a lot worse. And here's why this is a problem, guys. Because rent now costs 30% more than it did back in 2019. So like I said, if they would have just evicted the people that were supposed to get evicted in 2020, they would have had a much easier time finding a new place to live, providing that they could find a landlord that would actually rent to them after having gone through an eviction. But assuming that they could, the price would be far better than what they would be forced to pay today. So you think somebody who's going to get evicted right now in 2023 is actually going to have a shot at finding a new place to live, and the landlord's going to say, yeah, don't worry, I'll let you move in, and you don't have to pay full price on the rent? No, absolutely not, guys. So this is a big problem, and it is going to increase homelessness. And it's not me just saying this like this is my opinion, because in fact, this story says right here that many vulnerable tenants would have been evicted long ago if not for a safety net created during the pandemic. Now, one of the states besides California that was famous for having stricter and longer eviction moratoriums in place was the state of New York. And now it was recently found out that in upstate New York, evictions are going up, guys. And in 40 of the state's 62 counties had higher eviction filings in 2022 than before the pandemic. And there's 2 counties there where eviction filings are double what they were in 2019. So just like we had all these financial lessons that we had to learn during the 2008 financial crisis, well, here are some lessons to learn of what to never do again, meaning eviction moratoriums and these mortgage forbearances, these things that totally manipulated the housing market and led us to where we're at right now. And this is why I keep telling people that what you see right now is completely fake, guys. The prices that you see for rent, the prices for homes for sale, it's all going to collapse, because don't forget that these evictions are taking place in the same year that we're getting 1 million new rental units delivered to the US housing market, okay? So that already is going to take away competition from buying homes, because the thought of renting a place is going to become more appealing as more rental inventory becomes available. And we already know that renting is far cheaper than owning pretty much everywhere now. So when you combine this with the fact that so many evictions are happening right now, and these are going to be vacant units soon, guys. So think about this. All these units going vacant within the next year because of evictions, adding into the fact all the new rental inventory, it's going to make rental prices plummet. And along with it, I believe it will make home prices plummet as well, because all this excess rental inventory makes the prospect of renting so much more appealing than buying a home. I mean, say renting is half the price of owning something, pretty much everyone is going to opt to rent in that case, not only because it's cheaper, but in a lot of cases because they have no choice. They just don't have the qualifications, because the affordability is just not there right now to buy. And this is why we see mortgage applications at 30-year lows right now, because people cannot afford to buy at these rates and prices. And when renting is half the price of owning a house, it's going to be a no-brainer for people to choose to rent. And in Texas, things are just as bad as New York. In fact, in cities like Austin and Dallas, there's a record number of evictions right now in Texas. 270,000 eviction filings in the entire state of Texas throughout 2022, guys. That is astounding. Imagine, these are all people that are gonna get kicked out of where they live. Where are they gonna go? I'm sure you're gonna have some of them that are gonna be able to find a new place to live or move in with friends and family, whatever, but that's not gonna be the case for everyone. So it is going to increase homelessness, which is unfortunate, but a lot of this could have been prevented, and the scale of this problem could have been much lower if they would have just let it happen the way it was supposed to back in 2020. But no, we have to intervene, we have to put these things into place and make it look like, you know, we're the good guys here, when in fact, everybody's really gonna be in much worse shape now that this is gonna be happening. Now, one thing that the city of Philadelphia is doing is that they have about 5,000 tenants and landlords who took part in the eviction diversion program and resolved their cases and were able to avoid 5,000 evictions by working out some sort of deal, like a mediation deal between the landlord and the tenant, which is great. And they also have $30 million set aside for people who are less than $3,000 behind in their rent. But once again, guys, programs like this where they just throw money at the problem, I'm all for the mediation and working out deals between the landlord and the tenant, but saying, hey, if you're less than $3,000 behind, we'll just pay it. Well, you're doing the same thing as having the eviction moratoriums in place. You're just delaying the inevitable. You're making it so that people are not going to get kicked out today, but maybe next month or the month after that, after they're going to fall behind once again. So I just don't see the point in that line of thinking. It's already been proven not to work, as we can see here clearly. Now, some other areas are trying to do things like keeping eviction records off your credit report, or having your eviction records sealed, and giving low-income tenants who are being evicted free legal representation, things like this to try and slow down evictions, I guess. But honestly, I don't think any of this is really gonna work. And think about this, if you're a landlord and you're doing a background check on someone and you're trying to see if they're gonna be a good fit for moving into your place, and you live in a state where evictions are no longer on someone's credit report, that's deceiving, guys. You know, it's basically a lie. They're lying and saying that, oh, yeah, I've never been evicted and there's no proof to show that I ever have been, so you just have to take your chance and rent to me. Huh? I wouldn't be comfortable with that at all. So if you're a landlord, you need to be aware of what your local government is doing in terms of these eviction laws, because if they implement things like this, you don't even know who you're renting to anymore. And there's a whole slew of professional tenants out there that intentionally squat in your home and don't pay rent and ride out these terrible eviction laws in some of these states. Now, speaking of evictions, how about this for evictions? How would you like to move into an apartment building and get evicted for cooking meat inside your own apartment? Sound too crazy to be true? Well, guess what? It's not. In the good old state of New York, this can actually happen to you. In Brooklyn, there is a building that a landlord owns, and he's a vegan, and he requires all of his tenants to have a full ban on cooking any sort of meat in his building. You're not even allowed to have meat in the building, not allowed to bring any meat or fish inside the building. And this is likely to be a violation of your lease terms if you were to do this, and somebody could potentially file for eviction based on these terms if you actually decide to cook meat in the building. And here's the crazy thing, guys. The units in this building rent anywhere between $4,500 to $5,700 a month. So you're meaning to tell me that paying this amount of money, you're not allowed to cook even the type of food that you want to make in your own building? How insane is that right now? And the way that one of the real estate brokers that represents the building explained this to a tenant, they said, oh, the owner lives in the building and he doesn't want the smell of cooking meat to drift upstairs because there's not the greatest amount of ventilation in here. And, you know, he's a vegan, he doesn't want to smell the meat, guys. I don't know. Are we still in America? Is New York, is Brooklyn still part of America? Is this legal? Well, it turns out it actually is. I don't know how this is legal, how they can actually, you know, tell people what kind of food they are and are not allowed to eat. But apparently, according to the state of New York, this is allowed over there. And some of the tenants over there are saying, oh, we don't care, we don't cook anyhow, we just get takeout. Well, what about takeout? Are you banned from having, you know, meat in your takeout dish? Is that something that's going to be allowed? Could you be evicted based on this? To me, guys, this is completely bonkers. It's completely upside down. And I don't know how anyone would sign a lease moving into a place like this and agree to these type of terms. Even if you're not a meat eater, it's not even just about if you're a meat eater or not. To me, it's more about freedom and the choice to be able to eat meat or have a friend over. What if you have family over that's not vegan and they want to eat meat? They're going to be punished because of this. You could be facing fines or eviction or, you know, forfeiting your lease because of this. This is just wrong. But then again, you agreed to it when you signed the papers and moved into this building. So good for you. Now, one of my viewers, Steve, he's always sending me these great stories, and he sent me another one today about the Repo man. And it turns out the Repo man is moving up in the world in terms of technology, guys. In fact, this story that he sent me was about a Repo man. He drives around in a Crown Vic. He doesn't have a tow truck, and this Crown Vic is equipped with cameras all over it that can spot the cars and the license plates of potential repossession cars that they need to pick up. It's kind of funny when you see rental listings like this, you know, $25,000 a month for this house, and they have been steadily increasing the price on this house and getting it rented over the past couple years. You see, they rented it in 2020 twice, once for 18 grand, another time for 22.5, and then they rented it in 2022 for 23,000, and now they're being bold and raising it an extra 2 grand, asking $25,000 a month for the latest rental. So let's see if they can get it. And property tax bill here is pretty steep at a whopping 32 grand a year right now. Basically how this works is this Repo man drives through a neighborhood just like this one, and then let's say you drive past these couple of cars here, the camera will read the license plates of these cars and determine whether or not they're in the database of cars that are on the repossession list, and then they'll call the tow truck to come pick them up. And guess what? The other part of this story is that the repossession industry is completely booming right now. Turns out 2022 saw a surge in the amount of auto loans going delinquent, way over the 2021 numbers. Right now, the auto delinquencies are at its highest point that we've seen since the year 2012, guys. And they're saying that this is because of the subprime auto loan crisis, where people who are getting loans for these cars never going to be able to pay them, just like the housing crisis we had back in 2008. Very similar story. So things are starting to get real right now, okay? You don't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted. You don't pay your mortgage, you're gonna go into foreclosure. You don't pay for your car payment, the Repo man's gonna come down the street with the camera, find it, and pick it up. When I saw the for sale sign was missing from this house, I thought maybe they finally sold it, but nope. Says it's still on the market for sale. It's been listed for 476 days. Now imagine that. They listed this house for sale back in January of 2022 for $2.195 million, and now they're down to $1.9 million, and the property was on the market for so long that they finally decided to rent it in November of 2022. Even then, it took them a whopping 7 months to get this house rented. They only rented it in June for $9,700 a month, and now they're behind on their property taxes. You see, they're delinquent, didn't pay the property tax bill in 2022, and it's just unbelievable, guys, that people let it get down to this, that they'll just let the place sit empty for a year and a half like that, trying to sell it for ridiculous numbers. No one's interested, and now you're behind on your property taxes. Now, funny enough, the house right next door to this last one just hit the market for sale about a month ago. They're asking $2.2 million, so clearly they learned nothing from their neighbors next door, because they thought it was a good idea to start asking more than the house next door can't even sell for. And mind you, this house is almost 1,000 square feet smaller than the house that cannot sell for this price. So good luck with that. And the only thing good here is these guys have owned the house since year 2000, paid practically nothing for it, so they're going to make a killing when they do sell, if they sell. and their property tax bill is $10,000 a year, and that is with a homestead exemption. So get ready for all this stuff, guys. It's time to start paying your bills. If you haven't been paying and you think that there's just going to be more and more government intervention and they're just going to come in and save the day and give people more stimulus checks and put more moratoriums on things, I think that's pretty wishful thinking at this point. Is it possible? Sure. Anything is possible. Is it very likely? I highly doubt it. And the main reason for that is because it's not in the budget, okay? They've already raised the debt ceiling and things are already as high as they're going to go right now, and there's just no room left in the budget for more of this help for people. That is just, it's done, guys. So you need to be ready to pay, and if you're not, unfortunately, the next step is repossession, eviction, or foreclosure. And this is why I think things are only just beginning right now, because when you look at the economy, when you look at the housing market, none of the problems have really been felt yet, guys. Everybody's asking, oh, where's the housing crash? Well, wait until we have, 1.5 million vacant rental units across the country and rent prices plummet and people just go, yeah, I'm not gonna buy a house. Why would I buy anything right now when I can rent for half the price? Or wait until people can't go to work because they just got their car repossessed and unemployment starts to go up. And I know these are just, scenarios that I'm just kind of spouting off here, but I'm just thinking of the logical train of thought of where this is going to go. Same thing with foreclosures, guys. Foreclosures are up as well. So delinquencies on all these different types of loans have been rising. And with the cost of living where it's at and inflation where it's at, this cannot go on very much longer until the whole thing just starts falling apart, unfortunately. Can't say you didn't hear it from me. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below, subscribe to the channel, guys, give the video a like, and check out this video right over here if you don't want to wait for my next one, and I will see you over there.